The guru isn't there to teach you hidden knowledge. The guru is there to show you where the knowledge is hidden. I'm sure you've heard you're already enlightened, you just have to let go of the things that aren't. So the principle is that there is the one consciousness. So it is the ocean, and we are the waves. And in that ocean is all things that ever were through all dimensions and time. Everything that's ever been or ever will be is existing in that place simultaneously. Nikola Tesla talks about it when he said that he would envision these projects that he would do and see the thing in his sight and be able to put together and take apart that thing in such a way as to let it transpose into his waking life. And that's how he built the machinery. And so he never took credit for it because he knew there was no credit to be taken. The I in identity is not the thing that's coming up with the answers. The I am in universal identity is the thing coming up with answers. And if you listen carefully to anybody that is hip to esoteric knowledge, even to the smallest degree, they will say that. That is not me doing that, it's just coming. Jimi Hendrix talked about it, Picasso talked about it, and Picasso identified with ego pretty heavily, but he still talked about it. Van Gogh, Tesla, Einstein, everything and everyone that we consider to be great weren't great on a identity level. They were great in the superposition level. Because the deeper you go into this stuff with meditation or mindfulness or whatever your practice may be, the deeper you go into it, the more the identity starts just naturally falling away because you realize there was never an identity to begin with. It was trauma responses and triggers and belief patterns, and none of them are intrinsically true. That's why billions of people live billions of different lives simultaneously. That's why we have some people that have one opinion and another set of people have another opinion, and neither one is right or wrong. And it's in our suffering, it's in our pain that those things become more visible, more directing towards consciousness, understanding, awareness. So awareness is just a momentary realization that you had a feeling or thought that you don't align with. And then you wonder who is the one that's not aligning with the feeling or the thought. And in that way you make space. So music is so beautiful, not because of the notes being played, because it's because of the space between the notes, the areas that are not being played. Because it would be one big monotonal hum if there was no space. So it's in space, in a period or a perception of presence, that you realize there is no perception of presence. The presence is always there, and then you perceive it once it passes and you get back into pain body identity. That's kind of the principle of mind over matter. Once you can get to a place where there is minimal matter and there's only mind, then you can dissect mind into the awareness of the mind. And it's going to be very paradoxical. Things that you think shouldn't work do work. And then there's the madness that's involved in it. And it'll feel like you're losing your mind because you are. You just have to be careful not to lose your mind in the wrong way. So you can lose your mind and become somebody that shouts at trees or yells at cars that pass by. You have to remain in a state of spaciousness. And when you do that, and you're able to notice it, and you start asking, who is the me that notices this? It just keeps amplifying. And that's how Buddhas and enlightened beings get to the point that they're at, because they know they eventually come to this point where they realize there is no enlightenment per se. There is just the state of consciousness that was before we added to it. And so love plays a very big role. And if you've followed my videos, you know I talk a lot about love. And love is not this this squishy, fuzzy feeling that we get when we fall in love with a person, right? Because we're generally not falling in love with a person. We're falling in love with an identity that may be beneficial to us egoically. What real love is a form of deep acknowledgement and acceptance for things as they are. And it also runs hand in hand with the act of forgiving people for what they've, quote unquote, done to you. Nobody's doing anything on purpose, maliciously, for or to you. They're doing it for and to themselves. And in that way, their dirty water gets on your sheets. And instead of washing those sheets, you sleep under them and look what they did. Look at what they did, right? You don't wash the sheets, you just sleep in dirty sheets. And so that is the act of forgiveness, because once you can forgive you for the things that you've done and the thoughts that you've had, and then you start accepting the ego, you just go, yeah, that's it, and that is that, it starts dissipating. And that's washing the sheets. There are violent acts, there are mischievous acts, there's psychopathic acts that are done unto us. And as long as we survive it, and we're still breathing, we can always control the breath. So that's why I say you can't be into like a victim mentality, a poor me or a woe is me type mentality, because that will sink your ship just as fast as the exact opposite, which is disassociation and positive and toxic positivity. You can be so overly positive that it's toxic, and you've met those kind of people that like everything's great all the time, and then secretly at home, you know, they're drinking like a fish, or doing drugs, or beating themselves up. It's just a disassociation. You've got to go into that stuff. You've got to sit in that for as long as you possibly can before it starts to dissipate naturally. It's very individual, and it's very much up to us. There's no one singular religion, one singular belief, one singular political position that's going to save the world. There's no one act that leads to war. It's always a culmination of acts, and very distinguished decisions to make that act come to fruition. So the whole point of this is that the guru isn't there to teach you hidden knowledge. The guru is there to teach you where the knowledge is hidden. And it's in the last place you look. It's in the most obvious place. It's right in plain sight. It's just right there. And it's inside. The kingdom of heaven is within. There's nothing outside of that. That's all perception, observation. It can keep going on forever and ever. Do you think the science that we have today that explains all sorts of ailments and chemical compounds and elements and so on and so forth, do you think that in a million years that's going to have any relevance whatsoever? in 1,000 years, will it have any relevance whatsoever? It's the unanswerable question. So, sit with your eyes closed, breathe in and say I. And when you exhale, say M. Wash, rinse, repeat. As always, much love.